Hello and welcome to a Project Cars 2 video where today you join me on my first flying lap from the very first round of the Apex Online Racing Clio Cup League. Something a little bit new, something a little bit different for AOR and League Racing, and I thought I'd get myself into these cars because they are one hell of a lot of fun. So as I mentioned, we're on a first flying lap at the moment. It's at Catalonian National, just the first round, and we're just qualifying for the first of two races that we did that night and that are going to be featured here in this video. The first race is going to be 20 minutes and then the second race is a longer 40-minute race. It's a default setup league, so I'm running the loose default setup, and we're just coming to the end of the lap now, coming through the chicane to begin what was my fastest lap from the qualifying session. So again, a pretty decent run coming out of the final turn here, obviously trying to maximise the speed, coming down this start-finish straight to begin our proper flying lap. So we put a 121 on the board there as a banker, and that puts us up into a provisional P3, looking for our braking marker just after the 100-metre board for turn 1, going for the apex quite early, trying to pick up the throttle, and then just trying to bring the car back over to the right hand side to open up this left hander, which is completely flat out, providing you get the line right and you open it up enough. Then coming up the top of the hill, once again completely flat out, just let the car just do its thing and gently roll through the corner. Then coming into this fast chicane, just a quick dab on the brakes, filter the car through both apexes and take a little bit of grass on the inside, braking as we get about 60-70 metres before the hairpin, coming down into first gear and then getting as hard on the accelerator as we possibly can, coming out through the exit before coming over the curb and then into the long right-hander here. Wasn't quite as tidy to the inside as I would have liked to have been, but still fairly good run. We maintain the momentum. Now coming into this 90-degree right, down into second gear, bring the cars far right to open up the chicane, clobber both the curbs, try and get on the power as early as possible, then try and get a nice smooth line, basically the line of least resistance through the final turn, and that will give us a good run heading towards the start finish line when I jump myself up from a provisional P6 up to a provisional P2, and that turned out to be my fastest lap from the session. Unfortunately I didn't manage to improve, but in the end, as you can see, it was good enough for P5. My teammate Mr. Van Olmen went and managed to take pole position, so we're looking pretty good in terms of the team championship. So coming to the grid for this first race then, 20 minutes, starting P5, feeling pretty good. Loaded up the stable setup for this one and we're waiting for that green light, which is there, and we are underway racing. Get a relatively decent launch off the line, timing the lights rather nicely with the jump, and it looks like we've managed to pop ourselves up ahead of Andrex already on the run down towards turn 1. So we're going to be looking to try and get ourselves over to the inside line to see if we can pick off any other potential positions, but also partly defend from the guys behind and try and hold on to the position. It looks like the cars around in front and also behind got through the first corner fairly neatly. A little bit of door panel rubbing there between Asturbo and Frubo up in front, which has got me up alongside Asturbo as he lost some momentum, and that's going to be us sneaking up into third position through the right-hander at the top of the hill. Now we come into the fast chicane. It's all about trying to be smooth and carrying the speed and momentum through there, which we managed to do so, and you can see Mr. Van Olmen, my teammate, starting to pull away a little bit already, catching the curb on the inside there, lifting the inside wheels up onto 2, and that's going to cost us some momentum, but not before we have an absolutely massive screen freeze. Fortunately, I kept the steering wheel dead straight, and that meant we went off across the grass on the inside. It's going to cost us some positions. I know that Asturbo was alongside me somewhere along the line. I don't know if there was contact between myself and him with that screen freeze. So he's now just behind me, and what I'm going to do is basically, in the name of fairness, let him go past on the start-finish straight, because I had no idea if I shoved him off the track or anything like that. We were both fighting up for third position. We were both now down into 5th and 6th. So to me, at the time, I thought that in that screen freeze I may have knocked Asturbo off the circuit, so I'm going to let him through just to make sure that I avoid any potential penalty from the stewards. That's obviously going to cost us some positions, and you can see there's still the odd little bit of screen freezing going on here or there, which is something that kind of happened throughout the evening, unfortunately, which we just kind of had to deal with and contend with. But fortunately, we didn't have any other big screen freezes like we did with that last one. But now down in 6th position, coming slightly under pressure from Mad Haze behind as Asturbo is starting to pull away in front. Seems like there's a bit of a battle going on between, I believe that's Jurek and Tony Clifton. That's a battle for 3rd position at the moment, but Jurek gets a pretty poor run, coming through the left-hander, and now Asturbo is up the inside, coming through the long right-hander here. These two battling is going to allow me to close up onto the back of them. We've got 17.5 minutes remaining here in this race, which has already been pretty action-packed, and I can tell you now that you do not want to go anywhere because things are only just getting started. So here we're coming into the final turn for the 2nd lap. Teammate Mr. Van Ormond kind of running away with it, with Frubo in pretty close pursuit in 2nd position just behind. There's about a second or two between the pair of them, and then Tony Clifton is 4.7 seconds off the back, and we can see Asturbo looking to the inside of Jurek coming down into the first turn here. He's got the inside line. Jurek gives him the space, which is good, fair racing between the two of them. Mad Haze isn't too far off the back of me, but Jurek used the brakes a little bit there to try and hold the tighter line going through the left-hander. I was able to capitalise, not touching the brakes at all and more carrying the momentum. Used it to go around the outside of him and slip us into 5th position. We're right onto the back of Asturbo now as we're coming into the far chicane. Very difficult to actually see past the car in front when you're that close. I'm trying to basically nail the apexes and the curbs on the inside there. Another small slight stutter as we were coming into the left-handed hairpin there. But we haven't lost any ground to Asturbo. We're still right on the tail of him, and now Tony Clifton is the man in our sights, still there in 3rd position. There's a bit of a gap, but it's not too massive. We should be able to make that back up over the coming races. You can see people locking up the wheels as they're using the brakes to try and get into and through the chicane. But we got through that quite nicely. It's just one of the traits of the car, because obviously there's no ABS and there's no traction control. We're running authentic assists here in this league. It's a default setup league, as it's kind of a filler between the two GT3 seasons. And yeah, I thought this would be some great content for you guys to enjoy some other kind of form of racing with some front wheel drive cars. And you can see struggling to get the car slowed down and into the first turn a little bit. The rear end stepping away from me, which you kind of need to use to your advantage here in these front wheel drive cars, and got a little bit of a slowdown penalty there, running a little bit wide coming through turn 2 and into turn 3. So it's going to drop us more off the back of Asturbo. But our pace is fairly similar, and if he manages to catch up to Tony Clifton, I feel fairly comfortable in that I'll be able to close up onto the back of those two if they start battling pretty hard. But yeah, the lift-off oversteer, it's a common trait between the front-wheel drive cars, and you need to basically tame it and use it to your advantage. Some cases you kind of want to get that lift-off oversteer to help you rotate into the corner. Other times you want to try and minimise it as much as possible to carry the speed and momentum, especially in the high-speed sections. It's more the slower corners that you want that rotation coming from the rear axle. So yeah, it's all about getting that smooth flow momentum going through, whilst obviously trying to hustle the cars as much as possible to try and maximise every little inch of performance that you could possibly get. Just doing a quick brake bias change there, moving it forward to 55%, as it was set around 51, 52 I believe. Running a little bit deep there, going into the first corner, and now Jurek is right there on the rear of my car. There he is. May catch the odd little glimpse of him in the rear view mirror. There he is, having a little bit of a look to the inside, coming into the fast left-hander, but I'm going to be shutting that door on him. So we'll take that corner completely flat out. Just a quick dab of the brakes as we come into the fast chicane. Riding the curbs, dipping the wheels over the inside of them a little bit as well, just to try and basically shorten the length of the circuit a little bit. And you can see that Asturbo is closing up onto the back of Tony Clifton in front. Gap between the two of them shrinking, and Jurek is right there, still on my rear bumper. So I'm going to need to be mindful of him, just in case he tries to make a move whenever he gets a lunge. He got very close there to the rear of my car coming into the chicane, but it's a very difficult place to overtake. Generally, people just follow each other through. There's no real point in trying to dive down the inside there because it's usually unsighted and it's pretty easy to end up making contact. Saw Tony Clifton moving over to the right hand side of the circuit to try and break the draft from Turbo. I was moving over across as well, just to kind of follow it and pick up whatever draft that I could possibly get. A massive lockup from the inside front wheel, and that's now Europe up alongside me. I decided to just basically lift out and not battle him coming into turn 2 as I was on such a tight line. Just let him go on through and continue to fight on afterwards, but obviously it's cost me quite a bit of momentum with that mistake going into the first corner. Now maximising as much of the circuit as possible through that fast chicane. Slight lock up again from Tony Clifton, and Uruk gets a big lock up there and gets very sideways coming into the left-handed hairpin, but does a good job of managing to recover that one and not lose too much time. It's pretty easy to save these cars, to be fair. It's just a little bit of counter steer and just plant the throttle, and that will straighten the car back out for you, as quite nicely demonstrated there in that right-handed hairpin. We were starting to rotate a little bit more than I'd like and kind of went into a bit of a four-wheel drift. Now, as you can see up in the top right-hand corner in the HUD there, the front left tyre is taking an absolute beating around this circuit, but it's only a 20-minute race. Tyre wear isn't going to be an issue in this one. We won't be needing to make any pit stops, so it's just a case of pushing on through it and trying to manage it if you need to. But obviously the more managing that you do, the more time that you're going to lose in comparison to your competitors who are pushing completely flat out and trying to drive through the slight overheating issue. And even then, doesn't feel like there's too much grip being lost. Just a quick change on the brake bias to move it back 2 clicks to 53% on the front and 47% on the rear. That will just help with the tyre pressures on the rear of the car and also the rear brakes as well. You can see that the guys in front are starting to bunch up together. Turbo is still on the back of Tony Clifton, still in 3rd and 4th position, and then Uruk is closing up onto the back of them as well, producing quite a bit of smoke going into the left-handed hairpin. And we're starting to close up on all 3 of them. You can see they're fighting away quite nicely with 10.5 minutes to go. This is helping me to close up onto the back of them, and it's going to be a little bit of a slipstream train coming down the start-finish straight here. Tony Clifton once again moves over to the right-hand side of the circuit to try and break the toe a little bit, but also cover the inside line. Uruk goes and follows him. I'm going to follow as well to just try and pick up whatever slipstream I can from the guys in front, as Astoba is having a look to the inside but doesn't quite make it, locks up the brakes. I think there may have been a little bit of contact with Tony Clifton there. That's going to put them a little bit deep and allowed Uruk to get right up onto the back of them. More rubbing and racing going on between those 2 guys, as well, there's quite a bit of lag there from Uruk. Obviously Turbo getting caught up in that little bit of contact, and that's going to cost him all his momentum. Allowed me to slip around the outside in turn 3, got very close to the back of Uruk, almost wanted to try and make the move coming into the fast chicane, but it's only really single file through there, so settling behind for the moment. Tony Clifton going defensive, a light tap there between Tony Clifton and Uruk on the rear right of Tony Clifton's car, trying to go around the outside into this long left-hander, but it's not going to quite work. I've got Turbo up alongside on my inside now as well. Taking a quick glance over just to see where he is, giving him a little bit of a pinch there going through the right hand, obviously wanting to try and hold onto this position if I can, and eventually Turbo does settle in behind. So we're now up into P5, but the racing is getting really fierce and a little bit feisty in a couple of places, but it's still being quite respectable as well. No one's been properly taken off the circuit. It's just a little bit of door panel rubbing and fender rubbing going on here or there. Obviously picking up a slipstream from Uruk here in front, having a little bit of a look to him, but he's going a little bit defensive. The guys, both of them in front, locking up the inside front wheel. Toby got fairly close to the back of me, but wasn't able to make the move coming into the first corner. So still, as we are at the moment, with Tony Clifton still in 3rd, Uruk there in 4th up ahead, myself in 5th, and then Turbo still hanging on to my rear bumper in 6th position. So a tight 4-way fight for the final podium spot, and I go and mess up the fast chicane there. That's allowed Turbo to get down the inside of me coming into this corner. I'm going to go for the switchback and try and cut underneath him, but he took away the acceleration zone from me there and just placed his car very, very nicely to hold on to that position. I was forced to get out the throttle if I wanted to avoid making contact with him, which obviously I do. I don't want to run the risk of picking up any potential damage or potentially taking him off the circuit and out of the race, because there are stewards at AOR. They're not necessarily watching live in the race, but you can take incidents with other drivers and their various misdemeanors and things to the stewards, and they'll review it post-race and then apply post-race penalties, or penalties potentially for the next round if something is really, really bad. So obviously with that in mind, I want to try and keep myself clean, and we've got Asturbo looking down the inside of Europe coming into the first turn, but that doesn't quite work for him. Tony Clifton getting a little bit of breathing room with this battling that's going on behind him. We're just trying to hold on at the moment. 7 minutes and 10 seconds remaining, plus the lap that the countdown timer reaches 0 on. So it's a bit of a sprint race that we have in this first race, and then the second race is a 40-minute race. But the positions, top 16 finishing positions here from this race, will start in reverse grid order in the top 16 for the next race with a manual formation lap, and those who finished outside the top 16 will start in the positions that they finished here in this race. So kind of makes things a little bit interesting with a slight reverse grid, or half reverse grid shall I say, as there's well, there's 28 people here in this race, but there's the full 32 drivers signed up for the league. It's just obviously a few people weren't able to make it here for this opening round, or have retired or dropped out early on, and we've got a bit of a slipstream train, and Asturbo has pulled out to the left hand side of Europe coming down this start finish straight. Tony Clifton going very defensive, almost thinking about maybe making it 3 wide coming into the first corner, but instead I just choose to settle in behind Europe, but he comes and pinches me at the exit here. Otherwise I probably would have been a little bit further up alongside Asturbo. There's a little bit of contact there between Asturbo and Uruk that almost started to rotate Uruk round. That's obviously going to cost the momentum to Asturbo as well, and allowed me to slip up on through. Not going to be close enough though to try and make the move coming into the far chicane, which is pretty much a no passing zone anyway. And we are still right there on the back of Tony Clifton. A 4-way fight still going for the final podium spot. Tony Clifton going very defensive to York, who's trying to go around the outside and trying to get a little bit of a switchback here on one of the two drivers, but not quite able to make that work, as York got very pinchy and a little bit feisty there in the left-hander. Asturbo was up my inside, a little bit of fender rubbing between the two of us. He's still very much there though, going to settle in behind him and get way up onto two wheels going through the right-hander, clipping that inside curb. But we managed to get the car settled once again. Now into the final corner. Will it be a repeat of the previous lap? Obviously things are a little bit more spread out this time round, but Uruk is right there on the back of Tony Clifton, very close between the two of them as they're coming across over the start-finish line. You'll see that Mr. Van Orman is 15 seconds up the road now. He's got 2 to 3 second gap to Frubo behind him in P2. Uruk having a look to the outside of Tony Clifton as I go and outbrake myself, running a little bit deep there, but that's brought me right up onto the back of the guys in front. And that probably scared Asturbo a little bit, seeing me coming flying up behind in the rearview mirror. Less than 5 minutes remaining now, less than 4.5 minutes in fact. As we're coming to the final stages in this race, we're going to have to make some big moves if we want to try and get ourselves up onto the final spot of the podium, trying to take and make use of all the circuit through the far chicane that we possibly can. Tony Clifton once again going defensive, coming into the left-handed hairpin. A few of us locking up the inside front wheel, but things are a lot neater and a lot calmer than they were on the previous lap. Coming into the long right-hander now. Nice smooth lines by all of us. As Turbo hooking up a much later apex and getting a tighter exit. Tony Clifton again locking up the inside wheel, coming into the fast left. Slight lock up there from Europe coming into the chicane. All four of us are very, very close, coming in through the final corner and onto the start-finish straight. Only a few laps remaining, so there's not going to be many opportunities to try and make a move stick. Very much into the slipstream train as we all move over to the right-hand side of the circuit. Tony Clifton going defensive. Europe moves over to the left. Asturbo moves to the left. I'm going to stick kind of in between Uruk and Asturbo for the moment. Try and hook up the inside if we possibly can. Tony Clifton was a little bit slow coming into the apex, but Asturbo has made a phenomenal move around the outside there to pick up the third position. He goes a little bit deep and a little bit wide though, coming in through turn 2 and turn 3. This could be my opportunity. Try to time it right and carry the momentum through, but that didn't quite work. I got blocked there by Asturbo. To be fair, he didn't really change his line, but that probably would have been me up through into a comfortable third position, side by side, coming through the fast chicane. This is getting very, very, very tense now, and I'm starting to struggle with breath a little bit trying to commentate on all this. Obviously, this is happening post-race, this commentary, not actually racing at the same time, as Tony Clifton's going to have forced Uruk a little bit deep, going up the inside. Big door panel rubbing there between the two of us, as Tony didn't leave me any room over that inside curve. That's dropped me back down behind Uruk once again. Asturbo is now actually starting to run away with that final podium spot and has managed to get out a fair gap between himself and Tony Clifton, who's now holding onto fourth position and trying to battle and hold onto it for all his life is worth. A little bit wide coming through the final corner, but immediately switches over to the right to once again defend the inside line. I've got a double slipstream here. This could be a very good opportunity for me to try and make a move around the outside. I pull over the left, Uruk pulls over left to pull out the slipstream of Tony Clifton. It's going to be 3 wide coming down in towards turn 1. Got to nail the braking point though. A little bit of door rubbing there between the two of us, between myself and Uruk. Uruk's gone very, very deep. That's allowed me to slip up the inside and get a little bit of a switch back there, despite going deep into that first corner. Now up onto the back of Tony Clifton. A little bit of a slowdown penalty here, so I'm going to lift out, dab the brakes a little bit to try and clear that, and also hold on to the position for the moment. Managed to do that quite nicely as we come into the fast chicane. Just need to get a nice smooth run coming through here and see if we can close back up onto the rear of Tony Clifton to see if we can get ourselves up into fourth position. A little bit of a tidier run coming through the left-handed hairpin. We've also got some lap traffic coming into play a little bit up ahead as well. So things could be getting very, very tense in the final minute and 10 seconds of this race. Asturbo locking up and going a little bit deep coming through the right-hander, but he's still got a little bit of breathing room between himself and Tony Clifton. There's one of the back markers doing a pretty good job of staying out the way of all of us there, allowing us to go through without impeding and impacting the battles in any way. Unfortunately, I'm not quite as close to Tony Clifton as I would like to be, but he's still going defensive to the inside, but he does move back over to take that racing line on the approach to turn 1. I've got plenty of room to Europe behind 1.6 seconds, so feeling no threat from him. Big lock up there by Asturbo, a slight lock up by Tony Clifton. He goes a little bit deep going out the exit of the first corner. This could potentially allow me to get much closer and get a nicer, neater, tidier line coming through turn 2 and 3. Had to lift off the throttle a little bit through the mid corner to make sure I didn't run off too wide. Just need a good smooth run coming through the fast right hander at the top of the hill and now into the fast chicane, and see if we can potentially make the move coming into the left-handed hairpin. We've got a pretty good run here. Tony Clifton going to the inside to defend, going to be looking to the outside. I'm going to try and go for the switchback, as he does go indeed go a little bit deep, hooking up the apex nicely, getting a good drive off coming through the exit through the left-hander. We have the inside line and then closing the door on him to seal the position and make it ours coming into the long right-hander. Once again, we got a little bit of lap traffic. They do their best to get out of the way, slipping on through. Tony Clifton was looking to the inside there, but just kind of pinched him up against the apex, and also that lap car on the inside as well. That's going to seal fourth position for us. Unfortunately, Asturbo is a little bit too far away, and of course we've also ran out of time, as Mr. Van Orman has already come across the start-finish line to claim the race win, and I'm going to come across the line to claim P4. And my oh my, what an absolute belter of a race that was. That is what Clio Cup racing is all about. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. It was action-packed from start to finish, but because I finished in P4, that means I'm going to be starting in P13 with the top 16 in reverse grid order for the second race, which is obviously a little bit longer, going to be 40 minutes in total. So make sure you tune in for that video. If you enjoyed this race, please give it a like. Please share it with your friends, because that was absolutely monumental racing. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll catch you in the main race. But thanks very much for watching. Hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, have fun, stay safe, and take care.